Let us see the firewall evasion techniques. Now, before seeing the firewall evasion techniques, I would like to discuss a new topic of honeypots. So what are honeypot? Now, the honeypot definition comes from the world of espionage, where spies used a romantic relationship as a way to steal secrets, which are described as a honey trap or honeypot. Often an enemy spy is compromised by a honey trap and then blackmailed to hand over everything he or she owns. In computer security terms, a cyber honeypot works in a similar way, baiting a trap for hackers. It's a sacrificial computer system that's intended to attract cyber attacks, basically like a decoy. It mimics a target for hackers and uses their intrusion attempts to gain information about the cyber criminals and the way they are operating or to distract them from other targets. How honeypots work? The honeypot looks like a real computer system with applications and data fooling cyber criminals into thinking that it is a legitimate target. For example, a honeypot could mimic a company's customer billing system that is a frequent target of attacks for criminals who want to find credit card numbers. Now, once the hackers are in, they can be tracked and their behavior assessed for clues on how to make the real network more secure. Honeypots are made attractive to attackers by building deliberate security vulnerabilities. For instances, a honeypot might have ports that respond to a port scan or a weak password. Now, vulnerable ports might be left open to entice attackers into a honeypot environment rather than the more secure live network. So basically, honeypots are used to mislead attackers, and if attackers get infected in honeypots, the original system can track the attackers and get their technology. So basically, it is kind of a trap. So do not just randomly scan any website, you might get trapped inside a honeypot. Now let us see the different types of firewall evasion techniques. The first being the IP address spoofing. IP address spoofing is a hijacking technique in which an attacker masquerades as a trusted host to conceal his identity, spoof a website, hijack browsers, or gain unauthorized access to a network. Attackers modify the addressing information in the IP packet header and the source address bits field in order to bypass the firewall. Now here you can see the attacker's real IP is 1.1.1 and the source or the spoofed ID is 3.3.3. An attacker is indented to send a packet to victim whose IP is 2.2.2. Now attacker will not send IP packet using his real IP. So what he has done, he has spoofed the IP address of the internet router. So when attacker sends a packet to victim feels that the packet has been sent by the source 3.3.3 and therefore it will trust it. But in the real case, the packet is being sent by the attacker. So the process is like this. Okay, so this is known as spoofing of IP address. The next firewall evasion technique is source routing. Now, source routing allows the sender of a packet to partially or completely specify the route the packet takes through the network. As the packet travels through the nodes in the network, each router examines the destination IP address and chooses the next hop to direct the packet to the destination. In source routing, the sender makes some or all of these destinations on the router. So here you can see that attacker wants to send the packet to the server, but this way is blocked. So what? Attacker will send the packet via this way and then the packet will get reached to the server. The next firewall evasion technique that we are going to discuss is fragmentation. Now attackers create tiny fragments of outgoing packets forcing some of the TCP packet's header information into the next fragment. The IDS filter rules that specify patterns will not match with the fragmented packets due to broken header information. We have seen such kind of fragmentation attack in the IDS evasion as well. The attack methodology is same because the original datagram is broken down into simpler pieces so that the IDS or the firewall won't understand that all the packets are from one single malicious source. And another type of or different types of firewall evasion techniques include fragmentation, ICMP tunneling, which means it allows a tunneling a backdoor shell in the data portion of ICMP echo packets. Then ACK tunneling, in which it allows tunneling a backdoor with TCP packets with the ACK bit set. HTTP tunneling is the process or the technology which allows attackers to perform various internet tasks despite the restrictions imposed by firewalls. And finally, SSH tunneling, in which attackers use OpenSSH to encrypt and tunnel all the traffic from a local machine to a remote machine to avoid detection by perimeter security controls. Now these methods you do not need to study in depth, but if you are interested, we have attached a few books along with this course. Please go through these books if you are interested to learn more about firewall evasion techniques and again firewalls in general. Now let us see how to prevent or defend against firewall evasions. Configuration of the firewall should be done in such a way that the IP address of an intruder should be filtered out. Set the firewall rule set to deny all the traffic and enable only the services required. If possible, create a unique user ID to run the firewall services. Rather than running the services using the administrator or root IDs, it is a good practice to create an individual user ID. Configure a remote system log server and apply strict measures to protect it from malicious users. Monitor firewall logs at regular intervals and investigate all suspicious log entries found. Now by default, disable all the FTP connections to or from the network. Now catalog and review all the inbound and outbound traffic allowed through the firewall. Take regular backups of the firewall rule set and configuration files, and schedule regular firewall security audits. Also control physical access to the firewall and specify the source and destination IP addresses as well as the ports. Now in this way you can prevent firewall evasion so that the attacker cannot breach the system. In the next lecture, we will see how to carry out a firewall or IDS penetration testing.